Wandering into the town of Nain, Jesus meets a woman who is at a dead end. A trauma that makes her life a dead end of its own. She might as well be dead. She is a widow, a woman alone, vulnerable. In the Bible, widow is code for a person at the bottom. A person who cannot make it alone. She had a son. He undoubtedly supported her and protected her. But see them bringing the body of her son out of town for burial. The mourners weep, not only grieving for the dead man, but also for his mother, this widow. The next funeral will be hers. Despite all the uproar about the resurrection, deep down we may suspect that nothing about our time has fundamentally changed. Caesar's minions who arrested Jesus and put him to death still seem to be quite securely in charge, do they not? We're still having funerals. All the old distinctions, male, female, rich, poor, young, old, still hold far too much power. We brush ourselves off after the Easter hoopla, take a few Sundays for things to get back to normal, regain our composure, and continue our trek, our life journeys that end in death. Go ahead, set your goals, work hard, accumulate your stuff, and build your walls to give you some modicum of security, but at the end there waits for each and every one of us death. And not only at the end, all along life's ways there are little deaths, lesser funerals. Some of our most painful dead ends come before the end. Sickness, for instance, has been called a dress rehearsal for death. An intimation of what that time when we will be cut off from the land of the living, isolated, alone, confined. After a long illness, when we at last get better, we are often still shaken by the experience, having had a taste of that day, when we shall be confined not to a bed, but to a coffin. There's a phone call late one night, or the boss calls you in and tells you that you and the company have come to an end. Or you get a letter that tells you not congratulations, you're accepted, but rather we regret to inform you. Teach us to number our days, says the psalmist, so we can have a wise heart. The person who knows that our days are limited, that our lives do not go on forever, that all of life's dead ends and setbacks and disappointments are dress rehearsals for the last breath, this is wisdom. Teach us that our days are numbered so that we might be wise with life's fragility. This is the way we walk. This is the journey with death toward death that we call life. And yet we are walking with Jesus, the resurrected Christ. So hold on to your hats. This may be a surprising trip. This Sunday we walk with Jesus into the town of Nain. Now by this time Jesus has attracted a crowd that moves with him when he moves. And because of Luke's gospel, we get to be part of Jesus' entourage. As Jesus enters town, a dead man is being carried out. Sickness experienced by most of us as a taste of death, a prelude for dying, has become death for this man. And death has kind of taken over the town. Jesus' crowd arriving runs into death's crowd coming out. And though, as Luke tells us, Jesus had compassion for a sad, grieving mother, he orders her, don't cry. They didn't teach me in pastoral theology that what you ought to tell a grieving mother is, don't cry. Doesn't sound overly compassionate. Who tells grieving people not to cry? You don't order them around. Jesus commanded this poor grieving widow is a little bit surprising. But isn't that how so often it is with our journey with Jesus? All along the way, he shocks, surprises, challenges our way of thinking, disrupts our expectations, makes our lives more surprising than they would have been if he hadn't been walking with Jesus. Everything changes except death and taxes, right? Yet after Easter, we don't walk alone. Jesus walks with us, leads us down a far more surprising path that enables us to say, everything changes except taxes. Into this believable, dusty little town of Nain with its ordinary death and its usual grief, its typically worried mothers and its children without future, Jesus enters. And when Jesus comes to town, surprise, he commands even a grieving mother in his compassion for her to take charge of her feelings, to stand up and to defy even death, to be victor rather than victim. Even more surprising, Jesus commands the dead, get up! And the dead do just that. Now one might have thought that Luke, ever the competent dramatist, would have saved this resurrection wonder, like the raising of the widow's son, for a more appropriate time, later in his account of Jesus, at a more impressive location, like maybe the Holy City. And maybe even sometimes after Easter, when everybody's focused on it. But no, Luke tells this surprising Easter story here, near the beginning. In an out-of-the-way village, among anonymous, ordinary folk caught in the grip of ordinary, everyday death. It's as if Luke says, what the modern world teaches as extraordinary, miraculous, supernatural, is just another day on the road with Jesus. Now, once Jesus intrudes among us, God can surprise us anytime God pleases, pushing into new, previously off-limits territory that death thinks it owns. I love the way that Luke reports this resuscitation at Nain in such ordinary terms, to be expected, just a momentary diversion from Jesus' journey here. In the Roman Catholic Church, for someone to become named a saint, there has to be an investigation. And miracles must be attributed to the work of the candidate for sainthood. Note that no names are given for the grieving widow of Nain or her dead son. Maybe that's Luke's way of saying, we don't remember their names because this sort of thing happened all the time on the road with Jesus. Maybe we are meant to hear this story as that which we might even expect to happen in an ordinary little town like ours on an ordinary Sunday in June to anonymous people like most of us. Before we're done with this story, note the reaction of the citizens of Nain. A young man has been brought back to life. A widow has been given a gracious reprieve from her otherwise dead end. And the folks at Nain received the miracle with a curious mix of fear and glorification. Now, glory is understandable in response to a mighty work of God, a dramatic defeat of death right before their eyes. And yet there's also fear. It's more than a little frightening to experience firsthand the intrusion of a living, surprising God who can kick through the barricades of death. Sometimes the surprising work of Jesus among us is glorious. But you know, sometimes it's scary. And sometimes it's a bit of both. We don't know how to explain such scary, glorious moments when that which we thought was a dead end isn't the end at all. Where a way is made when we thought that there was no way before us. Some of the folks at Nain thought that they had found a great prophet among them. Others exclaimed, God has come to help his people. In a way, they were all right. It was a glorious moment. And a scary one, too, though. Scary to come face to face with a living God who will not let death be the last word. Will not let death rule. Jesus is a great prophet who tells us and shows us the truth about our true situation with life and death. But above all, this little story is a parable of a great, grand Easter truth. In Jesus Christ, in his walking with us even into the jaws of death, in his defeat of death, God has indeed come to help God's people. That is truth that we can bank our lives on. Amen.